Yeah, sports card hobby family, it's another day. It is another sports card video, but not just any sports card video. Today we've got the man, the myth, the legend, a hobby icon, and original hobby influencer going back to the 80s, 90s, and forward, Dr. Jim Beckett. I had not had a chance to really talk directly with him for maybe a couple of years. It's my mistake. It's my fault. I should have done a better job to stay in touch, but I was glad to catch up with Dr. Jim Beckett. And this is what this video is going to be all about. A good little conversation on a variety of different topics. Touch on a couple things that I haven't heard him talk about in other videos and other interviews and that sort of thing. So this was a really fun episode. Big thanks to today's video sponsor, Pristine Auction. Looking for all sorts of sports cards, non-sports cards, pop culture stuff. A huge variety over at Pristine Auction. They've got 1-hour auctions, 10-minute auctions, daily auctions, weekly auctions. They've got the elite auction every month. All sorts of goodness over there at Pristine Auction. I've got $10 off your first victory down there at Pristine. Just use the promo code down below in the video description as well as in the pinned comments. All right, Frank, let's roll the tape. That's your cue. Thank you. I am back. It's been too long. I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend. Dr. James Beckett is back on the show. I think, Dr. Jim, I think it's been a couple of years. We were just talking before. I couldn't believe when I was looking back at the email to reach out to you. I think it was 2022 or maybe it was early 2023. And I'm like, my God, time flies. How are you?
I'm good. I've done fine. You know, I've missed you, Dustin, but there are other excellent content creators out there. No, it's been fun, and I enjoyed our time before, but time does fly. I've done more than 1,000 episodes. And I still have some good friends that I haven't gotten to yet. So we'll see.
Fantastic. Well, I pulled together a few questions and they're kind of broad-based, open-ended questions, just to get your feel on, some of the things on, where our hobby is headed. I mean, to be honest, while there are a lot of things that are similar going back a couple of years when we talked directly last, a lot of things have changed in the last couple of years. And so I thought it would be a good idea to get together and talk about it. So the first one, does the trading card hobby, does it need new innovation, or do you think we just need maybe improvements on current offerings? Or, this is kind of the third part of the question, have we found hobby equilibrium or as close to as to what we can get to it, where the needs for collectors, speculators, investors are all being met in different ways?
Yes, and no. The first thing, no, there's always room for more innovation. The hobby needs to be exciting. It can't be static. It's got to be dynamic. And there, even when we get to the age or the situation with Fanatics being such a dominant player, there's still going to be a lot of innovation in there. But Panini, Upper Deck, Leaf even, there needs to be innovation, and there will be innovation. As far as equilibrium, no. I have a friend that gives a speech. He's like a management, kind of a really sharp CEO type guy. And he has a talk that he gives about the difference in balance and priorities. He said, if you do your priorities right, you'll achieve balance occasionally. But if you shoot for balance, you're going to be watered down. You're going to be fractionalized. You're going to be double-minded. So, concentrate on something, go for it, enjoy it. The equilibrium, the balance is it's ethereal. It's rarely achieved, and it's not a goal that I have. My goal is to have a hobby that is exciting and fruitful and fun for collectors and dealers. So in other words, I just break it down into buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
So breakers are sellers, and collectors and promoters, and there's a lot of other, the grading companies, but they're helping people buy or sell. The price guides that I did, helping people buy and sell. And that's the equilibrium I want. I want a fair playing field for collectors and dealers. So that means in the modern world, it's that there needs to be some evaluation of who the best content creators are out there. There's content creators out there that are not that are overly self-serving. Okay, well, I hope the the collecting public kind of figures that out based on how things play out. But the vast majority of them, I think, are really trying to be helpful, and I'm hoping that they do well. And the ones that are just hyping things for their own personal benefit, that I hope that's exposed, and I think it frequently is.
Yeah. Do you like, so, oh man, this is going to kind of pull me into, I wasn't going to go here yet, but you kind of just talking about the content space. You are going back to the 80s. I mean, you were my content creator going back to the 80s. I remember, like yesterday, I can remember it was like the spring of 1990. And I remember I was 9 years old, and I didn't know that there was going to be a Beckett basketball magazine and then a Beckett football magazine. I, of course, had the Beckett baseball magazine. And I flipped out as a 9, 10-year-old, just like a lot of other folks my age and around my age did. But those articles, and everything, I was reading it cover to cover. You were kind of the pre-internet, the content creator. I know there's other content creators. I'm not saying you're the only one, but you were kind of one of the big influencers back in the day. How does it blow your mind now that you just have like all the access, all the access to different opinions, to different publications, different, all of it? Is it good, bad? Is it nothing? Is it all of these things?
Well, it depends on how people interpret it, because back in the day, I had a great team working with me, and we did a lot of long form stuff. So our price guides were voluminous and were expansive, and the articles were longer. So we weren't doing clickbait. It didn't exist in those days. We didn't have these sound bites as much. We weren't hyping or promoting. We were just trying to put out a quality magazine each month. And so now, when journalism, such that it is more short form, and Twitter types of, not expressing yourself very quickly and emojis and all that, you're in a situation where everything is so fast. The digital trumps the analog by being, so many. It happens so fast, and so a monthly magazine is too slow. I understand that. But that allowed for some rhythm of the industry to have a monthly show calendar, and for people to think about, where am I going? Now it's more instantaneous. It's not bad. It's just the way it is now.
Yeah.
But there still needs to be some evaluation of what are the trusted sources. We were a trusted source at the time, and there are trusted sources now. And if people work toward that, then that's healthy.
Yeah, you're right. The digital world, it's completely, the barrier to entry is zero. If you think back to when you were making a magazine, you had to, you were running a business to create the magazine. You had to actually, you had to hire people. You had to do, just like me and a lot of other people, we have our iPhone. We put it on our little tripod, and we turn it on and we talk. And then we can publish we're all publishers. Right. I think it was, Elon Musk on Twitter now, he said, he's like, we are the media. You are the media. And that's essentially what it is, for better or worse. And I understand what you mean. Because we're all media doesn't mean we're all journalists, doesn't mean we all know what we're talking about, doesn't mean that, it's all good. But nowadays it's whoever's got you need to be clever. That helps.
Being able to emote and promote is good. But people always ask me back in even the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, what if somebody just came up and had a price guide and all the prices were higher? They just took your price guide and kind of ripped you off a little bit, but everything was higher. And then the dealers would like that better. And I said, well, I really don't think they would like it better if it's not accurate.
Right.
Accuracy was our only defense. Well, now, fast forward to 2025 now, what is accuracy? Accuracy is, like I say, the equilibrium, the balance, the instant accuracy. It might have been accurate yesterday, but it might not be accurate today based on new comps or the latest thing or an injury or something like that. So things happen really fast. And if it's honest and at the time, then it's just like comps. This is an accurate comp for 4 months ago. What does that mean for today? Well, for today, has there been anything since? If not, you're going to try to evaluate the market of whether things have generally gone up or down. So the simpler days, Dustin, simpler days, it was really hard to put out the magazines, but once the magazine was out, we had a high degree of acceptance, and it put everybody reading off the same sheet music, and it allowed for orderly transactions. Now it's a little bit of the Wild West, and it's sort of good. There's real opportunity for people that know how to read the crowd, read the tea leaves, and see the future. My specialty is talking about the present and the past. The future is uncertain for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's tricky because if you go back in time, and I was probably too young to even remember if we're just talking about mainstream news, because when we're talking about hobby news, there's a lot of folks that do hobby news. I'm one of them that does some of the hobby news type stuff. I try to do it in an entertaining way with Alf in the background and that sort of thing, but it shifted over to where it used to be somebody was just telling you kind of, hey, there was a car accident today and 3 people were injured or whatever. Now it's all opinion. It's all opinion news. It's all opinion based. If you turn on CNN or Fox or MSNBC or wherever you go, it's always someone's take on the news. So, and I feel like that's something that as a society, again, for better or worse, and it's in our hobby as well, where there'll be some sort of a news item and everyone's going to kind of chime in on that particular news. I like to listen to it. Some of it's, I like to listen to everybody's opinion on it. Go ahead.
Okay, but if you listen long enough to some of these sources, you'll realize just like CNN has a certain perspective, a certain worldview.
Right.
Fox has something different. MSNBC, all of these, you've listened to them enough. You've seen it's not just the video, the way they clipped the video, the way they edited it, the way they presented it. You get an idea of where they're coming from. The same thing's going to happen in the hobby. It won't be a network, but there'll be some understanding that these guys are understated. You look at Chris Sewell; he's built a great following. He just comes across as a regular guy, straight shooter, just telling you like it is. He's not hyping things. But then other people have their own shtick, and that's not bad. But ultimately, we get to where's the beef. There has to be something of value in every one of these programs, and it could be sizzle, it could be entertainment, it could be information, it could be encouragement. There's lots of things, but it needs to be honest. It has to be done with integrity. Otherwise, I think they'll get exposed. There are some content creators who have gotten in trouble. Gotten in trouble because they're out there publicly, and I don't want to restate some of the things that have happened in the last recently as well as a while back. It's just that you have a level of public trust, Dustin, and so do I, and so we don't want to betray that. I mean, we have people listening to us because they think we have words and pictures, or we have something of value that they're going to spend their time on.
Absolutely. Man, we could talk about content creation for probably an hour, but I'm going to shift it over quickly. I wanted to get your take, because I've heard this, and this doesn't have to be, we don't have to go too far deep into the weeds, but I've heard a lot of people say there's been a big shift. I'm sure you've noticed it too. There's a lot of nostalgia for the 90s and 90s inserts and 90s cards, whether they're expensive ones or not, it doesn't really matter. There's people that are just really focused in, and I'm a kid of the 80s, 90s, so I completely get it. What do you say when people say, oh, the manufacturers, they're lazy now, they're not making inserts the way that they used to, they're kind of just, they're on the back, they've got a card, they make a parallel of 40 different colors or whatever, and they're not putting enough effort into, creating the great inserts or whatever, the tech that was used in the 90s. Do you think that's a fair statement? And also, I guess on the back of that, if we go back in time, you had Pinnacle, you had Score, you had Action Pack, you had a variety of different companies competing. Which environment do you like better? Kind of less companies with more exclusives that, maybe have a little bit of a tighter rein. I would assume if you're running, and now again, I might be speaking out of turn here, but if you're running Beckett magazine, it would be a lot easier if you had Panini Tops or whatever. You had like a couple of companies as opposed to 20 that are making trading cards, Classic or whatever it was. What's your take? I know I just asked you 5 questions in one question. What's your take on manufacturing and all of that stuff? Sorry, I hit you with all of it.
First of all, you're glamorizing the 90s.
Yeah.
And really, it isn't all of the 90s. It's really the late 90s or the mid-late 90s. The
Right.
early 90s, before the baseball strike in 94, 95, around in there, it was mostly junk wax, except for Finest and SP. There were some things going on there that were good, but a lot of that early 90s stuff was not good. The late 90s is the golden age of inserts. But, that was then, and companies that just beat the dead horse and keep coming out with the same thing and retreading designs, of course they're going to do that. And they're going to do that until the dealers or the collectors, one or both, they just say no. They just say, we've seen this. This is boring to us now. Well, they're not boring some of those great classic designs that were innovative at the time and are still look interesting. But you will note, Dustin, that most of those companies that did those amazing inserts are out of business.
Right.
They went defunct. So what collectors and dealers want is they want card manufacturers to be nonprofits. They want them to not make any money. They want them to give such a good deal that they make the money and the card companies maybe break even. And in those days, like I said, they spent a lot of money on their product. The easiest, most, the highest profit type of product for these companies is a product that doesn't have the attributes, doesn't have game use, doesn't have autographs, doesn't even have these super elaborate inserts, but just has parallels.
Right. And to your point, it's selling out. It sells out.
It does for now, but it may not. There may be a backlash, but there's never been an effective consumer boycott of cards, no matter how bad they are, because you have the reverse psychology. Is if nobody gets it, it'll be scarce, and then it'll be valuable. And so if people pan it, it might come into vogue because nobody liked it and it's scarce. So it's twisted.
It is. It's a catch-22 no matter how you slice it. Yeah, it's like collectors, / speculators. They want it all the time. There's no winning probably for a manufacturer.
So my point is, collectors, to wait on collectors to just say no is not going to happen. But they are going to start making choices of saying, you know what, I'm not leaving the hobby, but I'm going to buy less. Or instead of buying that, I'm gonna buy this other stuff that I think is a better deal, or it's a better value proposition for me. It's less per box or per case, and I feel like I'm getting over time. That's going to be better for me. And so then the manufacturers will get the message that they don't want tired designs, and yet the most tired design is Topps flagship. It's very, very similar each year, and it sells as much as anything. And so collectors are saying with their dollars is that we want the current year athletes, and we want an interesting product, and we want something that has continuity. And so Topps is going to keep doing it. They're not going to try something drastic. In fact, Topps has, through Fanatics, they have really innovated with some of their Topps Now and some of these things that they've done, and kind of, it's too much lottery to me, too much gambling, but it sure has gotten some excitement.
Yeah, there's no denying that. No denying that at all. There's more participants in the hobby today than probably ever. I
think so.
And especially too, I think that says a lot when you come off of kind of the boom of 2020, 2021. A lot of speculation money flies in and then it flies out. And then there's kind of this assumption, I think, that maybe, okay, that was maybe a fly-by-night kind of boom, but not necessarily true when you're looking at, the money that's still being spent. It's just being spent differently and probably more smartly. But there's still just a ton of new participants coming in. I wanted to ask you, shifting gears a little bit, how do you want to be remembered in the card hobby in the future? What is the Beckett legacy in your mind? What would you like it to be?
Well, this is in keeping with your compound questioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, there's two ways to answer that. There's me as a person, and me
Yeah.
as the founder of a company that's been an enduring brand that is really not hitting on all cylinders now. So I want my legacy, is it inextricably linked between my personal legacy and the company legacy? I hope not, because I'm a person. When people joke about the man, the myth, the legend, I am a man. And I'm not a myth, and I'm not a legend because I'm still alive. But the company has taken on mythical mythology. I don't know if I would go that far, but I mean, BGS, in the way it's looked at, has gone from a very lofty perch to to some disrespect, when really there's some really hardworking uh, people there that have really paid their dues, and the corporate structure, which is now being fixed, was not allowing them to do their best. And so I hope my legacy, if because I think it'll always be somewhat tied to the company, I think 2025 is going to be a good year for the company. And so that's not good for me financially, but it's good for the hobby. It's good for the hobby that all the brands do well.
Yeah.
But if you look back and now as it's being put together, you can see that there were things going on outside the control of my company. Certainly outside my control. I'm not in the chain of command, but things that were going on that were external. And if we can just get back to the collectors, which I think is the intention now, especially in 2025, then I'm very optimistic. And does that reflect well on me? I'm sure it does. Does it reflect poorly on me if the company I founded does poorly? It probably does. I won't say it's my fault necessarily, but everybody that starts a company wants that company to endure and be successful and breathe. You can't just rest on your laurels. You've got to keep innovating. But there was a long period where my old company lost its innovation edge. And we never lost that when I was there, because that was a big part of my ethos, And
Yeah.
that's why when we did BGS, I was determined not to do a Me Too grading service, that we were going to innovate in some ways, not to keep PSA on their toes, but to provide an alternative to PSA. They've done great. And the reason they've done great is because they haven't been worried about what we were doing as much as they took care of business. Others out there, when they were competing with us on the price guide, they would try to think, well, they're doing this, so we'll do this. No, PSA has had their own approach. They've stuck to it. They've doubled down on their winners, and they've done great. My hat's off to them. BGS took their eye off the ball. And that, I don't want that to be my legacy. I want to help them get their eye back on the ball. Because it's my name on it. It's weird to go to a show, Dustin, and hear your name. And it used to be I heard my name in a very positive context, and now it's my name, not always in a positive context. So I want to help make it better.
You mentioned, so what you said, man, myth, legend. You said like, hey, I'm a man. I'm separate. I also have this separate identity from my company. I'm curious, does your wife, do your kids, did they pay attention to all of this stuff as well? Kind of like this industry stuff, because it's their names on it too, So like, did they pay attention to it, or are they kind of like, yeah, that's Dad's old company?
This is coming from the sports card dad himself.
I've got kids.
I'm saying, do your kids think you're a legend? I don't think so.
No.
So the focus is on the man. You're a loving father. That's great. And what you do when you go to work, which I'm retired now, so I'm around more. I'm able to do grandkid stuff and stuff like that. So that's been great. When I sold my company, which has been almost 20 years now, I got my life back. I mean, I did not have good balance. I had priorities. I was present with my family and did stuff, but I worked a lot and I loved it. But I have more time to have better balance. I don't have perfect balance, but if somebody needs me for something, I can break away a lot more easily because I don't have price guide deadlines and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. I can only imagine that sort of the pressure.
There are dads out there, Dustin, that they're a myth. They're a myth to their own kids.
Yeah.
They have a great reputation, but they're not there. I never wanted to be a dad like that. I'm not.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. 100%. All right, we'll finish out. I know we're coming kind of to the end of the time here. I'll just kind of finish it out, I guess, with what hobby topics excite you kind of as we head into 2025, and then any concerns that you feel like could slow momentum. And as we said, I mean, this is probably the busiest this hobby has been going back to 1990, late 80s, early 90s, as far as participants.
Well, I'm not sure I can answer it in an exciting way. I think that I'm not looking for giant surprises. I think we're on a good roll there. Again, it can't become stagnant, but I can't see the future. I just know that, I think there needs to be an encouragement of innovation in every part of the industry, in card shows, in grading. There have been some innovations in grading, card companies and the way they release products, all those things, the further injection of experiences into the packs, or at least redemptions for experiences. I love that. I love
that too.
But Fanatics is the one that can pull that off. What I'm nervous about, not to leave it on a negative note, but what I'm nervous about is that I think Fanatics is moving more toward the cash cow that is gambling. And as they get more entrenched in gambling, if that's the number one thing that they do, where it used to be apparel, I don't know that it's ever going to be cards, but I'd rather the cards be more like the apparel than cards be more like the gambling. And I hope that's the case. But again, I'm the OG now, Dustin. I'm the OG, so I can say that. But if people, who doesn't like to win? Who doesn't like to win? And even if you lose more often than you win, sometimes a big win makes you forget about all the small losses. So I don't want to see an emphasis on that. I want to get back to collecting. That every card has a home. That somebody says, I don't want this card, I'm going to sell it. And I don't want there ever to be something where people say, I couldn't sell it for anything. Nobody wanted it. I couldn't give it away. That's a problem. Okay. I don't think that's the case. When I go in the dollar boxes, there's some cards in there that people don't care about that are good cards. They're low demand.
One thing just on the back of that, when just going back in time to the 80s or 90s, did you ever imagine there would be a time where we had so many buying and selling options that we do now? Because obviously in the 80s, you're fairly limited. It's card shops, it's card shows, it's your buddies you can trade with. But, it was fairly, compared to today, it's a whole different world. Did you ever imagine that?
Well, if I would have, I would have had nightmares, because our business was built on accurate price guides that were developed from empirical data from these more limited sources of where the cards were sold. We could be at all the big shows. We could be on a first name basis with the major card shops, and then you're done. And we had collector surveys and things like that. It's so much more complicated now. It's so much more of a moving target that you want to have up to the minute reporting, and we just weren't set up for that. So, and yet you can't put the horse back in the barn.
I keep on thinking of more questions. When you look at the data tools now, and I think they do a pretty good job just considering, they're trying to pull data from, eBay is kind of the big source. It's a huge data source for, the different data tools that are out there. Do you feel like they're giving kind of because you're a data guy, obviously, and like you said, now you've got so many different sources, and I know that they do pull from a variety of different sources. I know with a tool like this, you take it with a grain of salt as well. It's not tracking card show deals and that sort of a thing, but at least it gives you kind of an idea. Do do you think that they're, doing a good job just kind of on its face, is just giving data out to people to make better buying, selling decisions? Or do you think that there's just a lot of room for growth there?
They're giving out. I mean, basically the problem is that you can find the price or valuable information about any card, depending on the grade, the player, the set, the number, the condition, all that stuff. But you got to do it one at a time. And then you got another card. You got to look that one up. Okay. And whether you're looking it up in Market Movers or Card Ladder or the Beckett price guide, if you're looking them up one at a time, that's laborious. That's laborious. So even if it's photo, you shoot a picture of it and you instantly know, it's still a one at a time.
Yeah.
I think and so for fast moving cards that are volatile, then that's the approach that our company needed to take. Because if something is very expensive, people are going to take the time to look it up. The missing piece in the hobby now are cards that aren't changing as frequently.
Yeah.
And that's a big part. It's not the glamorous part of the hobby, but it's the reason there are all these dollar boxes, because it's too much trouble to look them up. And so, yeah, there's 50-cent cards in the dollar box, and there's $5 cards in the dollar box. Occasionally a $10 card, lots of $2 cards, but people just cannot take the time to look them up. Mm-hmm. They can't look them up one at a time, and there's not. They could look in the Beckett OPG, but that's not as timely, even close to what it was when I was there. And it's just hard. It's just hard. But there needs to be accurate. I don't want people taking advantage of paying $10 for a $5 card, and I certainly don't want them to pay $10,000 for a $5,000 card. But the market for $5,000 cards is becoming well served. The market for $5 cards, not so much.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's only more and more cards that are generated out every year to figure out. It's like they're already way behind.
I know, but for every $1,000 card, there's 9,900, cards that are, most cards are under $1.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why you throw in the dollar box. You just think, I don't think it's worth more than whatever, and you throw it in there. And but again, if somebody had a box of 5,000 cards, it just, that isn't the way people collect anymore. They don't want a monster box. They want a Zion case. And I understand that. And so to do a price guide that would be super comprehensive, like we did, and Tough Stuff and Krause, SCD, all of them had the price guides. That's just not what people are looking for now. But there still ought to be a way to easily come up with a value for your pretty good cards.
Yeah. Well, and let's hope as we head into 2025, we're already there, but let's hope it continues to get better, and more companies coming, and just the companies that are here get better at it. Dr. Beckett, thank you very much for coming on. He is at Sports Card Insights on YouTube and on podcast form. Is there anything that you wanted to throw out there as we kind of
just keep up the good work? I've always enjoyed talking to you, Dustin. Come over to Dallas, come to the Dallas show, and we'll probably have one of my hobby dinners.
Yeah.
Trying to do that a couple times a year.
I'd love to do it. I know I need to get back to the last Dallas show I was at was the first one I went to, and it was jam-packed. It was May 2021. It was insane.
It's even bigger now. It's even bigger now, if you can believe it.
Wow, I didn't realize it was bigger now. That's amazing.
There are more rooms, the aisles are thinner, it's crazy. It's crazy. I will be there. So,
all right, man. Well, hey, I will stay in touch. I'll make sure it's not 2 years before we do this again. Hopefully not anyway. But thank you so much for coming on, and we will talk to you later.
Thanks, Dustin.